After a few years of less sexualized Super Bowl halftime performances, this year's, once again, sent a host of mixed messages, especially to women and kids. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. This is Breakpoint. In 2013, Rachel Campos-Duffy, a blogger on the Today Show's mom site, described watching Beyonce's Super Bowl halftime performance as, quote, a parenting challenge. The hyper-sensual show's half-dressed performers had left her kids with quizzical looks on their faces. Her 8-year-old simply said, "She looks weird." Well, I wish all of our kids were as confused by seeing something like that. But unfortunately, sexuality packaged as music and performance is an all too familiar part of our culture. After Beyonce's version in 2013, Campos-Duffy snarkily commented, quote, "I half expected a stripper pole to pop out of the platform." Well, this past Sunday, that's exactly what happened. A stripper pole. This past Sunday's Super Bowl halftime performance featured Jennifer Lopez and Shakira and was by far the raciest halftime show since Beyonce. For the last several years, there's been a notable de-sensualization of not only the halftime shows, but also Super Bowl commercials. Even Lady Gaga was comparatively modest in her 2017 performance. It's almost as if the NFL and its network producers got a message from Campos-Duffy and the millions of moms who complained about the visual assault on their children and families. Well, until Sunday, that is, when the Super Bowl again became another chapter in the ongoing sexualization of American culture, of women, and of children. In the midst of our culture's ubiquitous cause to protect kids and women from abuse and harassment, especially in this #MeToo era, we pretend that as long as we call it art or female empowerment, that this sort of overt sexualization will magically have none of the consequences that we now complain about. From the beginning, the sexual revolution has promised women that aggressively flaunting skin and sexuality was a means of empowerment, and that divorcing sex from marriage and procreation a means to freedom. In reality, of course, it was men that got what they wanted, sexual pleasure without the burden of commitment or the requirement of chivalry. For a brief moment a few years ago, it was almost as if that lie had been exposed. More and more women bravely coming forward, revealing how they've been treated horrifically as sexual objects and such. But if Sunday's performance is any indication, we've certainly not learned our lesson. It's not only women who are a victim of these bad ideas. Years ago, British Prime Minister David Cameron appointed a special advisor on the commercialization and sexualization of childhood because, quote, our children are growing up in a very sexualized world. That was an understatement even then. A far more accurate description is that this is an out-of-control social experiment and that the guinea pigs primarily are our children. In addition to the predatory hardcore pornography that haunts their devices and online lives, experimental theories about gender and sexuality haunt their education. And, as we saw Sunday, stripper poles and outfits haunt their so-called art and entertainment. Of course, J.LO and Shakira were a throwback to a couple decades ago, more for the Xers and millennials than for the Gen Zers. Even so, remember that this performance was on primetime network television, and check out the lyrics of Billie Eilish or Roddy Ricch or Lizzo to see if anything has really changed. As my friend Tom Gilson wrote years ago on Breakpoint.org, ethics require that subjects of our social experimentation give informed consent. But in our culture, adults force young people who have no say in the matter to go along with their fantasies, theories, and so-called expressions of empowerment and freedom. It's child abuse. Just as with Beyonce back in 2013, there will be progressive voices, maybe even so-called Christian ones, that celebrate Sunday's performance as, quote, empowering women and Latinas, particularly the children in cages part. But using sexuality for power is a triumph for men, not for women, and certainly not for children. And it only leads to their objectification and victimization. After all, I doubt there were very many wives watching their husbands watch, or moms trying to keep their children from watching Sunday's performance, that felt empowered in any way. For Breakpoint, I'm John Stonestreet.